When Nord Stream was damaged, there was uproar from politicians and mainstream media across Europe for about 24 hours. And then it seemed to have disappeared. Now, for the life of me, I was shocked that it could go down the list of major items in the news so quickly.
This is Mick Wallace, an Irish politician and member of the European Parliament, criticising his fellow lawmakers. He spoke at the European Parliament in December. Wallace then shared his speech in a tweet that went viral. The reason his views resonated with so many people is perhaps like Wallace, they are also wondering why European politicians have been silent about a major event like the attack on Nord Stream gas pipelines. Wallace even indicated that some of the European politicians might be trying to protect some of their own. Now, that's a very serious allegation. Samir Hersh, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, has added to the mystery by suggesting that a source has told him that the US Navy blew up the pipelines. His claim, made in a 5,000-word article, has been rejected by the US government and the CIA. Let's see what the whole story is about, and maybe the answer lies in how the Nord Stream gas pipelines were sabotaged. After the multi-billion-dollar pipelines were attacked in September last year, Western media and analysts were quick to blame Russia. The obvious reason for that is the war in Ukraine. It did not matter to them that Russia's state-run Gazprom is the majority stakeholder in the entire Nord Stream project. Since Russia launched an attack on parts of Ukraine almost a year ago, United States, UK, Germany, and their allies have launched an economic warfare against President Putin and imposed financial sanctions on Moscow. Nord Stream is a system of 4 gas pipelines that were built to transport natural gas from Russia to Germany. For years, they have been an important source of gas supply for Europe. The pipes are 1,200 km long and travel at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, making them the longest subsea pipelines in the world. On September 26, 3 of the pipes were ruptured at separate locations in the exclusive economic zones of Denmark and Sweden. The explosions were really powerful, so powerful that they ripped apart pipes made up of 4-inch thick steel. The pipes are even reinforced with concrete on the outside for extra protection. Even then, the blast destroyed a 50-meter long section of one of the pipes. Imagine that's equal to the length of 3 tennis courts. Blue Eye Robotics, a private company which operates underwater drones, recorded footage in which the extent of the damage can be seen. The pipelines are located at a depth of around 100 meters. Such a sophisticated and coordinated attack couldn't have happened without proper planning. To understand how underwater explosions work, I got in touch with a few experts who specialize in this field. One of the experts is Terence Long, the founder of International Dialogue on Underwater Munitions. He told me that military-grade explosives such as TNT, DM-12 or RDX might have been used. We need to understand how an explosive charge works underwater. Any type of explosion needs heat, shock, and friction. That's easily achievable even underwater. An explosion causes destruction in 2 ways. A blast will either scatter sharpnels or send out shock waves. Sharpnels cannot travel far in water, so that leaves us with the shock waves. Shock waves are measured in pounds per square inch pressure, and they travel 4 times faster underwater than they would on land. This means an underwater explosion can theoretically be disastrous for any structure. But hold on, in the case of Nord Stream, the explosive charges would have to be planted right on the pipes to cause the kind of destruction that was achieved. And here's the reason. I spoke to a former US Navy officer who has spent decades studying such explosions. He requested to remain anonymous because he is not directly affiliated with the Nord Stream investigation. Listen to what he told me.
But shockwaves damage things underwater in a bit of a different way. If you have something that is a consistent density, like if you had just a steel structure underwater, and an explosive was detonated in relatively close proximity, but not necessarily touching it, the shock wave would hit the metal, but because it's a consistent density, it likely wouldn't damage it.
So this means someone must have planted the explosive charges right on the pipelines, and it's not like bombs were dropped from a ship from the surface of the sea. Any scuba diver with modern scuba diving gear could have done the job. And the fear of something like this happening is nothing new. You'd be surprised to know that it was an expert report commissioned by the European Parliament in 2008 that actually spoke about such a scenario. The report, titled Security Implications of the Nord Stream Project, said, despite its concrete coating, an underwater pipeline is rather vulnerable and one diver would be enough to set an explosive device. You can read the rest of the report yourself. So this clearly means you don't need a whole navy to carry out such a sabotage. It means a non-state actor could have been involved. But it also shows that a state could play a part while avoiding detection. Russia has even blamed the UK, saying it has evidence. Nord Stream is one of the most debated projects of its type. From the European Commission to the US Congress and dozens of leading think tanks, it has been a matter of constant discussions, mainly centered around the question if Europe should rely too much on Russian energy. The project has two sections. Nord Stream 1 comprises of the first two pipelines, which became operational in 2011. It's notable that former German Chancellor Angela Merkel herself attended the opening ceremony. The other two pipelines, which make up the Nord Stream 2, were supposed to start pumping gas in 2022, but now their future is uncertain. On November 16th, the Swedish prosecutor announced investigators have found traces of explosives on debris retrieved from the damaged pipelines. But that's all the information that was released. And this brings me to the question of who stands to benefit from the attack on Nord Stream project. To understand that, we need to look at a bit of history. Europe and especially its industrial powerhouse Germany have long searched for a secure and reliable source of natural gas, which heats homes and is used as a fuel in factories. Unlike the US, which has vast oil and gas reserves, Europe is almost entirely dependent on imports to meet its energy needs. But the US and some Baltic countries such as Poland have always discouraged reliance on Russian gas for geopolitical reasons. In the 1980s, European nations including West Germany, Italy, UK and France decided to import gas from the then USSR via a 5,000-kilometer long Trans-Siberian pipeline, which goes over modern-day Ukraine. That pipeline, which is also known as Urengoy-Uzhgorod, was vigorously opposed by the US, to an extent that it imposed export controls on European allies backing the project. People have forgotten, but it was a major diplomatic headache for the allies at the time. Despite the US opposition, the pipeline was constructed. But then in 1982, there was a mysterious explosion, which delayed the project. Thomas Reed, a senior official in the administration of then US President Ronald Reagan, wrote a book in 2004, in which he claimed that the explosion and subsequent fire was caused by a computer virus that was implanted by the CIA in the Trans-Siberian pipeline. Now, I'm not trying to imply that the US has anything to do with the Nord Stream sabotage. I am just trying to point out some historical facts. The US has opposed the Nord Stream project with the same vigor and even imposed sanctions very recently on some European companies which were helping build the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. Now let's see how Ukraine is linked to all of that. Before Nord Stream 1 came online, nearly 80% of the Russian gas was transported to Europe via Ukraine. That balance shifted drastically when the Nord Stream 1 pipelines of 55 billion cubic meter capacity became operational in 2011. The Nord Stream project essentially helped Russia bypass Ukraine. Ukraine earns billions of dollars in transit fees from Russia every year. No wonder Ukrainian leaders have opposed Nord Stream for such a long time. Some have even called it Ukraine's worst nightmare. There is another dimension of the entire Russia-Ukraine gas relationship. Russia has also been Ukraine's key gas supplier. And for years, it sold gas to Ukraine at absurdly cheap rates. By doing so, it exerted influence over Ukraine in mainly three ways. Firstly, it discouraged Ukraine from developing its own indigenous gas reserves. Secondly, it exerted control over Ukrainian politicians who benefited from subsidized gas. Thirdly, it made some Ukrainians extremely rich, like this man, Renat Akhmatov, the wealthiest person in Ukraine, who has interest in industries ranging from coal mining to until very recently media. But he has made his money from making steel which he produced at plants that ran on cheap Russian gas. Ukraine has suffered from corruption since its independence in the early 1990s. Zelensky won the election on back of his promise to get rid of corruption. The Helsinki Commission, set up to investigate causes of corruption in Ukraine, blamed gas arbitrage, the practice of buying cheap gas from Russia and then selling it to consumers at market rates, as one of the biggest reasons which had held back Ukraine's development. This practice created a whole range of Ukrainian oligarchs. With deep pockets and news organizations in their control, the oligarchs projected an oversized influence over Ukrainian politics, and many of them maintained a pro-Russian stance until the invasion began last year. The war has changed the local dynamics in Ukraine. President Zelensky has gone after the oligarchs and seized their assets. Some of them have been forced to flee the country, while others have turned against Moscow. Any one of these actors, the supplier, the middleman, or the buyer, could have been behind the attack on Nord Stream project. But we wouldn't know until Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, which have been carrying out their separate investigations, make their findings public. But there is one thing I'd like to point out, which has made this entire mystery a bit complicated. Russia, the prime suspect, last month started repairing the Nord Stream gas pipelines at a cost of roughly $500 million. If Moscow is to be blamed, or if Moscow was responsible, why would it spend so much money in repairing those pipelines? Thank you for watching this video.